3. The year is 1996. The location? Tokyo. Fans descend on the city to attend the V-Jump Festival, a convention that brought together anime like Dragon Ball GT and video games like Final Fantasy VII. Hideki Kamiya, fresh-faced and leading his first creative project, stands by a games booth, nervously watching journalists as they squint at the title he and his team have agonized over for the past year: Resident Evil 2. What was shown looks nothing like the Resident Evil 2 we have today. Zombie gorillas, man spiders, a police precinct that looked like a forgettable office building. The mysterious Ada Wong went by the less mysterious name Linda. Claire Redfield didn't exist. Instead, we got the blonde college student Elsa Walker. 6 months later, as the release date loomed, all of this would be scrapped. And Hideki Kamiya didn't mind.
"It truly was a piece of shit,"
he said.
"It was boring, devoid of vision, and a poor excuse for a horror game."
The Elsa Walker edition of Resident Evil 2 would go on to be nicknamed Resident Evil 1.5 by the fanbase, spawning a feral, frantic hunt for a playable build. One guy got raided by the feds, others were conned out of tens of thousands of dollars, and a whole community have since rallied to rebuild a playable version of the game. Just like the monsters at the center of it, Resident Evil 2's death was temporary. It mutated and evolved in ways that brought fear, catharsis, and surprisingly, heart. The Raccoon City police station is a definitive setting. Villains like William Birkin and Brian Irons are harrowing. Monsters like the Lickers are among the series' best, and our cast of heroes are iconic. Then, 21 years later, it mutated again, this time as a full-blown remake. It grew new locations, vomited new puzzles, bled new kinds of tension, and the bones of its beloved zapping system snapped under all of that weight. As a remake, it's not as faithful as Resident Evil 1's, or as disjointed as Resident Evil 3's. It sits snugly in the middle, elevating sections while slicing beloved moments. The alligator. Don't worry, we are going to talk about the alligator. Nitpicks by fans of the original might bring death by 1,000 cuts, but it captures the spirit of the original while rewriting its DNA. It's more than just nostalgia reanimated. It's a game that feels alive, even as it drags us through the RPD's rotting corpse. The familiar beats are there, but with new angles, deeper shadows, and a revised understanding of fear. And much like another adaptation of the Resident Evil universe, it proves that retellings can still feel fresh. S.D. Perry's City of the Dead is a novelization of Resi 2, despite being the third book in her series documenting the Umbrella Saga. Good to know she's bringing the series' nightmarish number system on board. While her novels aren't canon, most of you seem to enjoy it when I reference them for my Resident Evil 1 critique. So, as we step into the blood-soaked halls of the RPD once more, don't be surprised if I reach for a few well-worn pages along the way. The station must have been magnificent once, but years of serving as an institutional facility had leached away its grandeur. The tattered, grand movie house look and the cold, hopeless atmosphere created a distinctly sinister feel, as if at any moment a cold hand could fall across your shoulder, or a soft gust of diseased breath could whisper across the back of your neck. 2 is a very different style of horror to 1's remake. That game embraced its retro design to take on that very specific old school horror that feels creepy simply because it's old. Resident Evil 2 is a celebration of its past and an examination of its present, and while there are some awkward stumbles, it's mutated to become something gorgeous and glorious. So grab your uniform or your leather jacket and join me as we dive once again into the world of survival horror. This is a commentary and critique of Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 2 drips. Less than 10 minutes in, Raccoon City's in the middle of a literal and figurative storm. The rain soaks our characters, puddles splash beneath our feet. Unlike the 1998 release, the police department is flooded. The blood and goo leaks from every possible orifice, and zombies dribble from windows and tight corners. By the developer's own admission, darkness and wetness were key development pillars. The monsters slug towards you at the speed of a trickling faucet. Resources and ammunition are the perfect level of sparse, drip-fed to us. The shiny new incarnations of Leon and Claire are so ridiculously sexy that they are, in the most urban dictionary of definitions, a couple of drips. Steady menace eventually snaps at the player's heels, but when it comes to its opening, the game has a very different goal for how it wants to make the player feel. It wants you to panic.
Stop moving.
Officer, you need help?
Stay back, sir. I got this.
Resident Evil 2 drips. The meat and blood looks slick in the RE engine, contrasted only by the dusty dry texture of the zombie's skin as it looks up, straight into the camera, acknowledging us. Leave the breathing of infected cobwebs to the Spencer mansion. With Raccoon City, we're flung straight into the grotesque. Resi 1 led with crude photographs and blurred footage of Joseph getting mauled. Resident Evil 2 prioritizes the grossness of its presentation. In the 90s, the game opened with a disclaimer telling us that this game contains scenes of explicit violence and gore. And that gore was there. Just look at what happens to the whistleblower Ben Bertolucci. His body is torn in two. But the disclaimer was forced in by censors, so the remake, releasing all these years later, where video game violence is common, doesn't open with it. Ironic, seeing as it's the most visceral out of the Umbrella Saga games. We leave bloody footsteps after splashing through a body. The decomposition of the zombies are a game mechanic. Ben gets his head crushed and his eyes popped. Deaths are gruesome, with focused shots that show creatures tearing the muscle from Leon or Claire's neck. Even when the game isn't being gross, it's being gross. Our opening shot is of a truck driver's teeth sinking into a burger, purposefully lacking in the fresh, vibrant colors of lettuce and tomato. It's grey slush. The game glorifies its repulsiveness. The camera lingers on ripped throats and stringy horror. It enjoys the disgusting. You wanted to know what this would look like in 2019? Here you go. It's a pulpy game, but not humorless, and once again, that humor has a dark edge to it. Item descriptions that refer to zombies as riffraff. A PA system that talks about delicious meals while we watch a zombie feasting on a corpse. A ragged, zombified cop slamming its head off of a vending machine. Umbrella security, blaring that we'll soon be subject to disciplinary measures after dispensing herbicide. Our opening contrasts the disgusting with the naive, regardless of who you're playing as. Leon Kennedy is a cop, about to start his first day. A slight demotion from stars, but everyone's gotta start somewhere, rookie. He's more likable in the remake, partly because of the softer approach by his actor, Nick Apostolidis, but also because the writing gives him more opportunities to play off that naivety rather than stoic copisms. In the original, Paul Haddad gave Leon a thin-voiced snark. He's kind of an asshole.
Let me guess. You must be Ben, right? Get up, now.
And in SD Perry's book, she takes that assholery and transforms it into cockiness. As he drives into the city, he thinks about the murders that kicked off the first game, and how exciting it would be to solve them. In spite of himself, he felt a tiny thrill. What had happened in Raccoon was horrible, of course, sickening, but the perps had never been caught, and the investigation was really just getting started. If Chief Irons liked him as much as the heads of the Academy had liked him, maybe Leon would get to work the case. Irons was apparently a prick, but he knew his training was top-notch. Even a prick would have to be a little impressed. In the remake, he's more optimistic, which juxtaposes Claire Redfield's pessimism. When the two meet and race off in a car together, Claire makes it clear that she doubts there are any survivors left in the city. Leon shakes his head. There has to be some at the police station. Has to be. Alison Court no longer voices Claire Redfield. A shame, because she had a unique sarcastic lilt that gave Claire her edge, even during the softer moments with Sherry.
But don't worry, I'll protect you. I promise. But you have to make sure you don't leave my side.
It's such an interesting sound that shows off her self-assuredness and confidence, but I don't think it would have translated to the more round way that Claire is presented in the remake. She's very different here, voiced by Stephanie Panisello, more belligerent than self-assured, paving a path so she can grow into a confident hero. When she first confronts Chief Brian Irons, she wields the strength of her brother Chris rather than her own. "My brother's in stars," she snarls, as if that alone is a good enough reason for Irons to fear her. If you play as her first, her initial meeting with Marvin Branagh doesn't focus on her, it focuses on her brother. By the time the credits roll, she'll take ownership of the Redfield name. Her jacket has also been pared back, one of the ways that she doesn't drip. In an interview with Polygon, Capcom's producer Tsuyoshi Kanda talked about this new emphasis on realism.
It's not so much that the times have changed, but when the game looks this real, certain things stand out as being very non-believable, kind of pulling you out of the experience. That applies to all kinds of gameplay elements, even something as simple as the costumes the characters are wearing.
Where once there was a print or stitching suggested by the OG, there's now just colourless lining, as if someone forgot to fill in the gaps. The reasoning behind this change was that her old look, with the exposed legs and arms, was apparently unrealistic. That reasoning is stupid. But if you want an in-universe reason for Claire to be racing along on a motorbike without padding, SD Perry gives it. Claire was exhausted, both physically and emotionally, and the fact that her butt had been aching for the last couple of hours wasn't helping much. It was getting dark, and like an idiot, she wasn't wearing her leathers. Chris would be totally pissed. It was stupid. She knew it was stupid to have left in such a god-awful hurry that she couldn't be bothered to suit up. But something had happened to Chris. She leaves because she's lost contact with her brother. Chris is missing, and Raccoon City is on fire. The remake implies that blasting off like this is the bravest thing she's ever done. Before the night's over, she'll go much bigger. The panic of confronting our first zombie offers both of our heroes that opportunity. The gas station traps us in this long corridor, much too skinny to run around, as it forces you to fight rather than run away. There's a distillation of the immediate scare as it transforms into full-blown panic. It doesn't matter how perfect your shots are, the zombie will always crawl back up after it hits the deck. If you want to finish it off, you'll use up more than a good chunk of ammunition. Every millisecond of our first shed of blood is important in a horror game, and that is particularly true of Resident Evil 2 because the attack is much more frenetic than the steady, tense trod of Resident Evil 1's opening minutes. All hell breaks loose with just 3 zombies in this small cramped space. The aisles force the player down specific paths, leading you closer to danger. This isn't a mob of zombies, it's just 3, but the shock of seeing them drizzle into your path will enhance that panic and see these slow walkers as a pounding, powerful threat.
I can't stay here, it's not safe!
Go on ahead! I'll meet you at the station!
I'll be there!
Resident Evil 2 strikes the perfect balance between fight or flight. In fact, I would argue the remake has the most effective meditation on the two in the entire series. The players got to assess a situation, the resources they carry, and the potential threat of an enemy to decide if now is the time to wail on them or if now is the time to retreat. The experience in the gas station taught us that sometimes combat is the only option. Being stranded in Raccoon City teaches us that fleeing is a possibility. Excuse me, sir, I'm just trying to collect some footage. We are so underpowered, having lost most of our ammo with our first zombie, and the odds are so stacked against us, having the streets glazed with monsters, that the player has no choice but to helplessly follow the walls of fire in the hope that safety is just around the corner. Shortly after this opening, that drip is gonna turn into a torrent. The police station has fallen into chaos. The main hall has been set up like a medical bay with bloody bandages and gurneys. This was the last refuge for Raccoon City. The hospitals were overrun within hours. The subway was shut down. The Umbrella Corporation wielded its control to close every exit. The musical theme of the main hall brings a calming, steady pluck of strings, there to reinforce the momentary safety we feel as we collect the nearby handgun bullets and first aid spray. But it's countered by 2 important additions. The rumbling echo underneath gives the size of the RPD a daunting gravitas. This isn't just an entrance hall, it's a chamber. The second addition is the ominous metallic wind, like distant doors opening and closing. Just like with Resident Evil 1, that contrast continues into other themes too. Relaxing beauty pushes against an ominous tone. Take the save room theme. The notes tenderly walk, with a piano and guitar leading each other by the hand. It's gorgeous and incredibly short, coming to a stop after barely 40 seconds. It also doesn't loop in the save room like other games, so after 40 seconds that tender sound of safety dissipates. It's effective for the tone of the horror, but it's frustrating that such a gorgeous piece of music is gone before it can barely start, and it doesn't hold a candle to the original. The Resident Evil 2 save theme is my favourite in the full franchise, and to have it be discarded for the remake is heartbreaking. There, the notes were longer, more meditative, more considerate, with the chords reinforcing the gothic feeling of the RPD. Don't worry though, you could just pay more money for this $60 game to hear the iconic sounds of the past. Stay classy, Capcom. Officer David Ford documents the attempts of the RPD to hold back the outbreak and protect people, but his reports devolve into panic, frustration, and depression. It wasn't just that the walking disease attacked, it's that friends and colleagues died while the police failed to fight back, running into mad obstacles and the whims of Brian Irons. There's evidence this place once teemed with desperate life. The potential for hundreds of zombies in the RPD is huge. Tension activated. In the original and the book, that feeling is very different. It's hollow and isolating. There, the RPD feels abandoned. Outside of a couple of rooms, it looks like there was hardly any fight back from the cops. The T-virus whirled through here quickly, and all that's left are shambling corpses and monsters. Empty. There was no sign of life in the grand old lobby of the RPD building, and no sign of the disaster that had overtaken Raccoon. Like the city had moved and forgot to leave a forwarding address. Leon gave up on not feeling surprised, closing the door behind him and stepping down into the sunken lobby. Hello? He kept his voice low, but it carried, echoing back to him in a whisper.
This is good news. We can get you to a hospital.
No, I am not the priority here.
Lieutenant, I'm not just gonna leave you here.
I'm giving you an order, rookie. You save yourself first. I'd come with you, but I'd just slow you down.
Officer Marvin Branagh isn't looking good. He's been bitten, nursing a wound that's turning corrosive. The remake pays him more respect than the original because he gets to be a badass and save Leon and Claire's life. He set up camp in the grand main entrance of the Raccoon City Police Department rather than hiding in an office, so he's part of our safe space as we're forced to watch him slowly deteriorate. Mood is defined by context here. The West Wing is shrouded in darkness because the power blew and a fuse is missing. Black, inky water has flooded the halls because one of the toilets have broken and is overflowing. Our exploration is restricted by stacked furniture and debris, there to keep something out and lock us in. The Gothic art and emphasis on grandiose architecture comes from the fact the station used to be an art museum. Our footsteps echo because they clack on marble tiles, and when marble isn't the focus, our attention is drawn to wood. That carries over from the original. It was in every shot. The floors were wood, the doors were wood, banisters and desks coloured the space. Brown, the colour of rot, was a specific focal point depending on the fixed camera angles. On the second floor, a helicopter burns, threatening to eat away at that wood and set the whole station ablaze. It's narrative tension that Claire is all too aware of. The way the helicopter had buried itself on the rooftop was gnawing at her, inspiring visions of the old station going up in flames. From the looks of things, maybe that wasn't such a bad idea. Dead bodies and bloody handprints were on the walls. Claire wasn't happy about the idea of touring the station, but death by fire didn't carry much appeal either. The environments of Resi 2 are much more focused on proportionate realism than Resi 1 was. Because the camera is now styled over the shoulder, the police station's maze doesn't need to be as tall or long to give the camera places to live. Instead, the rooms are simply smaller, corridors are narrower, clutter funnels you into streamlined pathways, forcing you into the reach of zombies and bringing that all-important panic when they shuffle out of the dark. One area where the mood loses context is in the lighting. The game's as dark as Wesker's sex dungeon, though I bet you'd wear those damn sunglasses anyway, wouldn't you, Wesker? And because of that darkness, the player needs to play slowly so they don't miss anything. Excellent for tension, great for obfuscation, and a solid way to trick us into feeling safe during the well-lit moments, even in places where we shouldn't, like the second floor library. But occasionally, the lighting shifts in a surreal way that's at odds with the diegesis elsewhere. Heading up to the third floor balcony of the main hall brings gloom, shadow, and mist that doesn't make sense because of the strong glow on the first and second floors. There's an odd transition when descending into the basement, as if it's being loaded in as a separate location rather than a fluid part of the station. Tsuyoshi Kanda talked about the importance of contextualizing the RPD in an interview with VG 24/7. Quote,
It's always been set up that it's a former museum, which is why it has statues and whatnot in it, but we'll take that concept and really just push more groundedness. So even though we're using a museum as a reason to have all kinds of bizarre traps and setups, statues to push around and that kind of thing, we ask, what is actually feasible? Even though it's out of the ordinary, we look at what is possible. Where do you draw the line to say it'd just be unbelievable for you to do this?
When it comes to the police station, the remake's slavish insistence on groundedness doesn't detract from the bizarre. The Spencer Mansion's insanity will always be the peak of Resident Evil's weirdness, but the RPD is still a frankly crazy building that bursts with character, namely because it's characterized by mysteries and Brian Iron's influence. Look at this exploded wall on the top floor. I wonder what caused it. Nemesis? No. There are no traps here, no closing walls or falling ceilings, no secret passages that lock us in, no suit of armor that whirls around the corner with spikes. If the Spencer Mansion was characterized as cold and unfeeling, with obstacles that always existed long before the T-virus outbreak, the RPD is defined by chaos. Traps come in the form of monster ambushes rather than the building itself. A licker bursts through the ceiling in the art storage room. Zombies crash through glass in ways so unpredictable that they barely feel scripted. On the third floor is a cage where a priceless statue holding a medallion is locked away. The door is locked and the only way through is by blowing it to smithereens. That's not an obstacle that always existed in the RPD. It's something that was set up specifically by Chief Irons. The same can be said for our key hunt. War isn't the visual motif this time. Now the keys are decorative and glossy. A ruby red heart, a glittering diamond, leftovers from when the police station was an art museum. Most aren't locked away behind strange riddles. Instead, they're scattered and seem specifically hidden by Irons. Even when he's not responsible for locked doors, like lowered shutters, we can trace why these are closed off. A desperate attempt to contain the monsters. Just because we're shrouded in darkness, and just because the RPD is trying to capture realism, doesn't mean the building is unmemorable. The library, the dark room, the press office, the clock tower, Stars HQ, the pigpen. Just those names alone are likely going to conjure a memory for anyone who's played the game. Resident Evil 2's setting might be as banal as a police station, but it's not just a police station. It's an umbrella front with a secret passage leading directly to one of their labs, and it's under the thumb of a man who worshipped its artistic history. The eastern staircase has canvases depicting warriors and knights. A desk lamp shines onto a bust, casting a humanoid shadow on this wall. Numerous statues hide medallions that will unlock a secret passage. Donna Tartt wrote that, "Beauty is terror. Whatever we call beautiful, we quiver before it." The astonishing beauty of what the art museum once was has been invaded by the police department's refurbishments, but it still creeps through. And when it does, the decadence is scarred by the grisly. Blood is splattered on the walls and floor, sometimes waiting for us and sometimes caused by us. Bodies lie slumped on the ground or up against walls. Corpses for now, but waiting for the T-virus to activate. A cop hangs from a pole in the West Wing. Something rammed him face first into it, but what? A zombie couldn't have done this. Where lickers lurk, like the third floor storage room, there are steaming piles of shit everywhere. Stinking lumps that get in our way when trying to escape. Resident Evil 2's gruesomeness doesn't just come from blood.
There you are. Come here. Take a look.
Yes. I knew she'd make it.
You know her?
Yeah. Name's Claire. I came into town with her.
Leon doesn't heed Marvin's advice, here or in the book. He leans on his responsibilities as a police officer. Rescue the survivors, he thought. He backed toward the door, swallowing heavily and struggling to accept the change in plan that could very well kill him, but that he couldn't walk away from. Official or no, he was a cop. It was his moral and civic duty to try and help people. So let's see if we can let Claire into the station, eh? Structurally, the RPD's rooms nestle into each other. It's a building that burrows, mainly because of all the blockades that halt our path. The remake has more rooms to uncover, with a greater variety when it comes to how we open up the RPD. Carried over are things like the decorative keys, putting out the fire on the second floor, the library bookcases, the C4, or unlocking doors from the other side. But we also now have bolt cutters, pressure valves that let us pass through the locker room, shutters opened by cranks, windows to scramble through, fuse boxes opened with a knife, and all of this compounds to make the RPD feel labyrinthian. You're going to backtrack a lot, a surefire way to keep the tension, but the various keys you find don't just open up new rooms, they also open up shortcuts and optional secrets like weapon upgrades. A roll of film we later find in the sewers leads to a secret compartment in Albert Wesker's desk. Inside is a picture of Rebecca Chambers. I know I said Wesker was a sexless being in my Resi 1 critique, but this feels targeted. The map retains that digitized look to contrast with the Gothic architecture, but it's also incredibly helpful when compared to the original. Rooms are named and labelled. Items we missed, like bullets or herbs, are noted on it. It's not just coloured in red to tell us we missed something. It holds our hand more, but also feels necessary because of the darkness that's dripped into the station. Scrutinising a room is simply more difficult now because of the graphical fidelity and cloaking shadows. Opening the inventory still pauses the world around us, but we've unfortunately lost the full screen atmospheric user interface. Modern Resi's menus have a dull and blunt aesthetic, and the simplicity loses that old sense of character that made the vibe of Resident Evil so unique. Thankfully, the bluntness is bolted on to more convenience. We can discard items whenever we like, we're not forced to hold on to them. We can also combine herbs or ammo straight away when we find something new, meaning there isn't an awkward juggle where we need to put a herb in our rucksack and then combine.
I tried, Leon. But I couldn't stop it. We can't let this thing spread. It's on you now. Just go.
Collecting 3 medallions, the glorious statue in the main hall rumbles away, revealing a secret, decorated study and passage. This isn't as simple as it was 21 years ago. We need to collect 3 medallions this time, not just 1. Because the obstacles have been increased, we're in the RPD for much longer than we were in 1998, but that's not all that's changed. This stupid puzzle where we need to push 2 statues to opposite sides of the room has been erased completely. The main hall now has a staircase that leads straight up to the 2nd floor. The ladder we had to kick down is gone. It makes that space feel larger and grander. The loft where the lickers have nested is a new space altogether. The way we take ownership of the RPD is different as well. Before, we could find a fuse and had to pick which set of shutters to close, meaning a hallway was free of a second wave of zombies. Now it's all about the wooden boards. It makes the resource management more continuous because we can find 8 of them, and we have a lot of flexibility when it comes to choosing where they go. This single window in the western stairwell is always my go-to because I like having the area around my safe room clear. Zombies will inevitably break in eventually, but we can choose where they go so there's a sense of preparation. Leon and Claire are continuing the frantic work of the RPD in making the police station safer. I do wish the shutters were carried over from the original though. I think they could have worked in tandem with the wooden boards so there were 2 opportunities to keep zombies out. On a return visit to the RPD, lickers and Mr. X infest the place anyway, so locking off a full hallway wouldn't pull back the fear. What made the shutters so powerful was that it bled into the zapping system. Events in Leon's campaign would domino into Claire's and vice versa. The shutters that Leon would close in his playthrough would later malfunction when playing as Claire, a great scare that robbed us of safety. Their absence would be less of an issue if Leon's wooden boards showed up when playing as Claire. But they don't. So let's check in with her and see what else doesn't zap into her playthrough. By the time Claire arrives at the police station, Leon's been there for about an hour, solving puzzles, unlocking doors, and watching sadly as Marvin Branagh collapses into undeath. Regardless of who you choose for the B scenario, we will always enter through the back of the RPD. It's a trick the game pulls a couple more times. Especially later in the sewer, it's shocking how easily we get turned around just because we're entering from a different part of the tunnels. All momentary confusion can lead to tension. The trick is to make sure we don't get frustrated. For players of the original game, that frustration might grow the longer you play as Claire, and soak into the fact that the zapping system has effectively evaporated. The STARS office was empty, cluttered, cold, and layered with dust, but Claire was reluctant to leave. She sat at Chris's desk, gazing at the small strip of black and white pictures that she'd found tucked in the bottom drawer. The 4 shots were of the 2 of them, grinning and making faces, a photo booth memento of the week they'd spent in New York last Christmas. The longer she looked at him, the better she started to feel. Not happy or even okay, and no less afraid, just better, calmer, stronger. Using a Leon A, Claire B playthrough as the focus, the original game had the pair interact 6 times. The opening, the stars room, swapping radios, a quick call telling us a door's open, Claire saving Leon when he's shot, and the ending. In the remake, they interact 4 times. The opening, the back entrance, a call in the labs, and the ending. We specifically lose the meeting in the STARS office where Leon finds Chris's diary and gives it to Claire, sadly confirming that her brother isn't in Raccoon City. What replaces it is this scene around the back, the scene that kicks off Claire's campaign.
I'm guessing you don't have a key in one of those fancy pockets?
Unfortunately, no. But how are you doing?
You know, just surviving.
That's good.
Claire's time in the RPD sets up Leon's presence in small ways. The cabinet he shoved out of the way is already moved. Marvin Branagh has already turned into a zombie. Mr. X is already clomping about on the hunt. But after we leave here, almost all evidence that Leon even exists stops. We find the occasional note from him, but that's it. And slowly the inconsistencies start to grow to a point where Resident Evil 2 becomes similar to Resident Evil 1. These aren't 2 complementary playthroughs, they're alternative retellings of what happened that night. But for this chapter, I'm gonna need you to take off those rose-tinted glasses. No, seriously, go on, there's a crack in them anyway. Because the original zapping system wasn't some glorious masterpiece. It was an incredibly ambitious concept that was mostly excellent while mired in inconsistencies.
What happened? You're bleeding!
I ran into this woman who is in trouble. Her name's Ada.
In the OG, here are the actions that the player took that zapped over to the B scenario. Number 1. Closing the shutters. Number 2. Choosing between a side pack for more inventory or an SMG. We could take both, but whatever we left behind would be there for the other character. Number 3. Scanning your fingerprint to open the G-Lab. Number 4. Oh, that's it actually. And here are some of the actions that you had to nonsensically repeat. Lowering the ladder, finding the unicorn medal, putting out the helicopter fire, burning this painting to retrieve a jewel, the dumb statue puzzle, the power room puzzle, the sewer water puzzle, the torch puzzle to get the gear, collecting the keys, the Birkin tram fight, powering the lab with a fuse, killing the moth, the library puzzle, including the floor breaking underneath us. I guess it just magically repairs itself. It wasn't all repeats. Claire had to blow up a wall while Leon would deal with the chest plugs. She'd also get a unique puzzle to unlock a panel in Chief Iron's office, but the slabs she needed to collect just replaced items that Leon collected previously. They weren't in new places. Through gameplay, we lost a good sense that there were 2 survivors passing each other like ships in the night, because Claire would repeat a chunk of stuff that Leon already did. Hideki Kamiya acknowledged the repetitive elements in the AB scenarios of the original, but his excuse was that making the game too realistic would have made it less entertaining. I don't subscribe to that. It's clear these inconsistencies are because of limitations and the fact that the game had to be overhauled late into development. It's a damn miracle that what we got was as good as it was. Speaking to the PlayStation Magazine in 1998, he said,
By the end of Resident Evil 1's developments, we were already thinking about having one story that is shown through multiple perspectives. When we first started making Resident Evil 2 though, we didn't have a system like that. At a certain point, we scrapped everything we had done and went completely back to the drawing board, and it was then that the zapping system got added.
And besides, you can suspend your disbelief with the repeated puzzles. As a kid, I just assumed Brian Irons re-hid the unicorn medal and re-locked the doors. The gameplay stuff didn't intrude too much because we were so blown away by the other changes. The player might have only influenced the B scenario 3 times, but the story zapped plenty, recontextualizing moments from the A campaign where Claire and Leon would overlap. Claire saving Leon's life after Annette shoots him is a great touch that is completely absent in the remake. Mr. X was unique to a B playthrough, not just with his scripted pursuits, but his final boss, and his inclusion completely changed the game feel. Claire wouldn't need to burn away vines in the lab. A different part of the laboratory was unlocked where we needed to break into the smelting pool and turn on the elevator. Claire and Leon got a different set of rooms to explore, with Claire using the heart key and Leon using the club key. A chunk of changes like that carry over into Resident Evil 2 Remake, alongside a chunk of those inconsistencies. Leon and Claire get separate areas with separate keys. Both need to find fuses, but Leon needs them for the parking lot and Claire needs them for Iron's office. The way they handle the gameplay sections of Ada and Sherry are far more interesting and unique compared to what the original did. In 1998, we had to push these bloody crates twice, 4 times if you wanted to swap your A scenario. The liquor jump scare, where a monster crashes through the mirror in the interrogation room, is reserved for the B scenario. In the original, that happens identically across both playthroughs. What's missing is the player-influenced zapping. No shutters, no choosing between the weapon or the side pack, no fingerprint scanner, and the inconsistencies also remain. Both Claire and Leon blow up the same door, both douse the helicopter, both have the same scripted moment where Mr. X appears, despite him already stomping around in the B scenario beforehand. They both need to use the star's USB badge in the same way. The chest plug puzzle has a different riddle, but it's mechanically identical. They both need to collect the 3 medallions for the main hall statue again. Though when it comes to that final puzzle, the solution is different and the notebook has a page missing because Marvin ripped it out as he transformed. A neat touch that changes things up. And our reward for retreading these steps? An identical boss fight to what Leon faces.
I'm sorry, I can't understand you.
You need help.
Why?
He's right behind you.
Sherry Birkin scurries away from us deep into the bowels of the police station. Something is hunting for her, she says. A monster. The book tells us that she spent hours living inside the ventilation system, hiding, and what she's seen is enough to rob anyone of their innocence. Not long after Sherry had gone into hiding, she'd seen a terrible thing through the grating. A tall man with red hair had been in the room, talking to himself, rocking back and forth. At first, Sherry had thought about asking him for help to find her parents, but something about the way he was giggling made her wary. He'd been holding a big knife. After a long time still laughing and mumbling and rocking, he'd stabbed himself in the stomach. Sherry had been more scared by that man than by the zombies, because it didn't make sense. He'd been crazy and he'd killed himself, and she crawled away crying because it just didn't make any sense. It isn't long before Claire sees Sherry's monster, a strange man in a lab coat, wielding a metal pipe as his hunched back pulses and throbs. He comes screaming out of the darkness, and soon Claire is lost in a maze of steel vents and steam, hunted by something very different to the zombies we've faced. William Birkin. It is a brilliant boss fight, the first phase of many Birkin encounters. He slams his weapon into the piping so he can hide in the steam, rushing us as we panic and try to find our way through. When it came to the original, our first Birkin fight was a gift. A straight line, a slow walk, and a sluggish wave of the pipe. A few shotgun shells and he flipped over the side. But here in the remake, he is a threat, and he hunts us. But Leon already did this in the exact same place, so in the B scenario, that threat is dampened. Birkin's design isn't even different. He hasn't mutated or evolved in any way that differentiates him here from Leon's playthrough. To read both A and B as canon is to assume that Birkin fought Leon, repaired the walkway, climbed back up, and waited for Claire to arrive so he could trash it again. And it's with evolution in mind that I want to talk about Goosebumps. Why do we get them? The human brain is able to communicate that same anxiety, tension, or shiver through a myriad of ways, so why in 2025 have we evolved to still get goosebumps? Why has it carried over to the new versions of ourselves? The running theory in the scientific community is that they come from our closest ancestral relatives, chimpanzees. When a chimp feels threatened or scared, they pilo-erect. Stop laughing. They get goosebumps that force hair to stand on end, making them seem larger. It's a defense mechanism that humans have outgrown. Nobody's gonna back off from a mugging because you get goosebumps. We've evolved in other ways that overshadow it. It's vestigial. What does that have to do with Resident Evil 2 Remake? Well, the first campaign you play is structured in a way that makes the A-B scenarios look weaker than they actually are. The narrative inconsistencies are infuriating and are by far the weakest part of an otherwise excellent game, but they're the result of how overstuffed Campaign A is. Producer Yoshiaki Hidebayashi commented on this when doing press rounds prior to release. Speaking to Rely on Horror, he said,
"We still want to replicate that feeling of seeing two sides to the same story. We did simplify it a bit and make it more elegant by meshing together what happens to the characters' A and B scenarios into one story. I think players today, they want these sorts of deep, intense experiences with the story, and by stretching it across 4 scenarios, it gets spread a little thin, and creates a sense of repetition by going through the game multiple times to see everything. So for that reason, we went with 2 campaigns that still show all of the events of the character's story, rather than have it all split up.
Frankly, the A campaign is so gluttonous with what's included that it makes the B campaign feel a bit dry by comparison. Stuff that was once relegated to just one scenario have now been carried over to both. Mr. X is now in both campaigns, that's the big one. But then there's the explosives puzzle, Birkin's Phase 1 boss fight, the Birkin Phase 4 boss fight, the full story of William's death and evolution, the G-Lab. Once upon a time, they were all limited to just the B scenario, and now they're stuffed into A as well, making your second playthrough feel a bit less special. They're just like Goosebumps. The remake is mutated to a point where they're vestigial on a second run. It's not that this stuff is missing or cut, it's that it's been replaced with something else that's inconsistent with two campaigns. The shutters have become wooden boards, side packs and a plethora of weapons are spilling into both campaigns, so that choice is useless. The fingerprint scanner has been eliminated altogether because both Leon and Claire get to enter the G-Lab regardless. It is disappointing that Capcom didn't show a bit more restraint and prioritize two playthroughs, because I do think Resident Evil 2 Remake is weaker for it. Sincerely, it would be less of a problem if the 1998 version was still available to buy, but unless you're jumping onto GOG or sailing the high seas, its legacy has been replaced by the remake. The zapping system wasn't perfect, but it was ambitious and precious outside of the Resident Evil series, and it's been erased by that lack of availability. But where they put their focus instead absolutely pays off, especially when it comes to the puzzles that Resident Evil is known for.
FBI, huh? What's going on here?
Sorry, that information's classified.
Where you going?
Do yourself a favor. Stop asking questions and get the hell out of here.
Leon felt a rush of anger that she could seem so calm after very nearly killing him, but as she got closer, he found himself wanting to forgive her. She was beautiful and wore an expression of genuine pleasure at seeing him, a welcome sight after so much death. Her deep, satiny voice was almost a purr, a strange contrast to the way she looked at him. In the station's parking lot, Leon is saved by Ada Wong, International Woman of Mystery. She claims to be FBI, and despite the fact she's wearing sunglasses indoors, a resi red flag if there ever was one, Leon decides to trust her. The goal is to get a keycard that will unlock the car park and let us escape the RPD, back into the city. But there are riddles and puzzles and convoluted obstacles blocking our path, and a lot of these have been completely reworked for the remake in a way that I adore. Just like when STARS infiltrated the Spencer Mansion, our investigation is defined by our key and tool hunt. 1998's puzzles were clean, streamlined, straightforward, and sometimes a little dull. Take the statue in the main hall. Inside is the spade key. How do we get the key? Well, we find the unicorn medal. Okay, I wonder where the unicorn medal is. How mysterious. Oh, it's just sitting on this desk. That was easy. They were there for the sake of backtracking rather than head scratching. Keys to tension, navigation, and exploration, but none of them ever really needed a moment of pause to figure out. The riddles were basic, the fetch quests simple, and they usually happened in sequential order, so there was no chance of you getting confused outside of that first expedition through the station to find out which doors were locked. In the remake, there are consistently numerous steps to solving one part of an overall puzzle, so the RPD, just like Spencer's estate, evolves into one big escape house. Riddles lean on other riddles to be solved, so there's a domino effect that takes us up ladders, through locked doors, and into the concrete bunker of the RPD's cell block. None of the medallions we need are just sitting on a desk in the STARS office, but if they were, we would need to get the spade key from the loft to unlock the second floor of the east wing, find the bolt cutters that unlock the east office, find the valve handle, take that back to the west wing, and use it to shut off the steam in the locker room so we can get around. Or, for a more present example, take our current mission, grabbing the key card.
Hey, I'll make you a deal. Unlock this cell and I'll give you this. There's no other way out of that parking garage, believe me.
Sorry, I can't do that. I have to talk to the chief first.
Ben Bertolucci, whistleblower and journalist, is dead. When they meet, Leon assumes Chief Irons had a good reason to lock him away, and his hesitancy is played like dumb naivety rather than brash arrogance. The truth is that Ben knew about the corruption infecting the RPD, and when everything went to hell, he was happy to be locked away. He thought this jail cell could protect him from the rampaging hordes. But Leon and Ada watch in horror as the wall explodes and Ben's head is crushed like a grape. Poor guy. Wish he died next to the bars though. Ben has the keycard we need, so cue a long and winding road to grab it. Our journey takes us through the cells, around the parking lot, back to the RPD, and up into the clock tower with puzzles inside of puzzles that act as structure. The remake's puzzles are involved. Take the clock tower puzzle that gives us the fuse. In the OG, we just had to slot a gear into place. Now we have to consider 2 gears and 2 mechanisms, moving pieces around to lower the staircase and break the bell. Or what about later in the lab? The original game has us crafting a fuse to power up the facility, but it boils down to picking up a case next to the machine, putting that case in the machine, and then boom, one shiny fuse. It tests an empty inventory slot, nothing more. In the remake, that is now replaced with a herbicide puzzle that forces us to figure out how the machine works. It feels like a rookie cop pushing buttons and using logic rather than Umbrella's AI doing all the work for us. Even if we weren't making comparisons, there is a lot to praise. The space feels designed around the puzzles, they're not bolted in as an afterthought. Iron Psychopathy explains the scattering of items and weapons. In his BD panic, he rampaged through the station, giving orders that didn't make sense, locking keys behind puzzles left over from the station's days as a museum, sabotaging the cops so they would all die. We find a note from him thinking about torturing them, but mechanically, he is the reason why the C4 puzzle was set up in the first place. He planned to blow up his colleagues. He gives a face to player frustration. Not every puzzle is because of him. Once we leave the RPD, his influence dissolves, but because we spent so much time wading through his madness, his stupid, clammy face haunts every future riddle. The art museum origins excuse the sillier puzzles like the gem in the scepter that connects to the statue. That excuse isn't necessary because this is a Resident Evil game and weird settings are part of the charm. But that charm is strengthened by an attempt to contextualize everything, and it eventually characterizes Umbrella as an insane, paranoid entity. In the Nest lab, there's a console, not with numbers, but symbols. We need to find labels that have symbol combinations on them, remember them or note them down, and then input them on the console to open doors. But some of these labels are ripped. How are we going to figure out the rest of the symbols? Mysteries, questions, and puzzle solving, baby. The chest plugs are carried over from the original, but they're not just a fetch quest now. They're a riddle in the dark of the sewer. Other puzzles feed into that plug hunt, like a section where we need to swap between the king and queen plugs to open gates through a short labyrinth. There are multiple layers everywhere you turn, and the majority of them are contextualized by that classic Resi staple of brochures, flyers, memos, and evidence reports. The chest plugs, something bizarre and comical, are made more playful to bring a grim irony. They come from Knight's construction company who built the sewer, and their CEO is R.B. Fisher, a World Chess Alliance honorary member and a reference to the real-life chess champion Bobby Fischer. Sometimes the solutions are spelled out in plain text, like safe combinations scribbled on the back of letters, but other times the clues are more elusive. A slip of paper tells us that a body in the morgue belonged to a kleptomaniac. His hands are clenched shut after rigor mortis, so we can piece together that there's probably an item inside. That clue specifically jumps out because it's one of the few times that the game doesn't highlight important text in green. Elsewhere, it's insistent on cleanly separating key information from story details. Does that streamline exploration? Absolutely. Do I wish I could turn this off so I can fully immerse myself? Definitely. It simply spells out too much, and in some cases, makes the puzzles mundane. I got word that there's only one of those power panel parts in the generator room. The guy that's here to fix the bell in the clock tower should have another. Oh, I wonder where the fuse we need is. What isn't mundane is the dark room. In 1998, this was a fun space that let us develop photos of zombies and monsters. But now, it has a useful mechanical function. If we're willing to venture through the darkness, the flooding, the zombies, or the lickers, we can return to this room and develop film rolls that reveal things like locker combinations, or clues to puzzle solutions. The statue of the water-bearing nymph slid forward at a slight angle. The picture at its shoulder dropped a slender piece of metal atop the lip of the defunct fountain. The spade key. Ada sighed, picking it up. She already had keys. S.D. Perry's book feels very different to her novelization of Resident Evil 1. Even though it's longer, it feels breezier. Its pace doesn't slow. Because the conspiracy is more character-centric, and because our cast is larger given more depth, the pages and action are dedicated to the feelings, thoughts, and interactions of the Raccoon City survivors rather than puzzle solving. By the time Leon and Claire arrive at the RPD, Ada Wong has cracked most of these puzzles. Our chapters are dedicated to survival, not a key hunt. When it comes to the game, one of my favorite parts of the remake are how many of these puzzles are optional. Locker combinations, dials, a star's badge that unlocks a cabinet but can secretly turn into a USB to grab the Magnum, the sewer maze that leads to the flamethrower, Leon's desk, portable safes, the weapons room, the car key in the parking lot. A host of puzzles are buried under spattered gore and crazy machinations. The two standouts are the weapons locker and Leon's desk. This is partly because the rewards are great, partly because of the narrative aspect, and partly because the game doubles down on choice. Respectively, we get a shotgun and a high-capacity handgun magazine for our trouble. With the weapons locker, we need to find 2 spare keys for the keypad, and we'll find them separate from each other, so we get to choose if we want to open lockers that use the number 2 or the number 3 in any order we like. Leon's desk forces us to identify some of his dead comrades to solve 2 locks. The answers come from the names of cops who he was supposed to meet today. Our flashlight catches a welcome banner. A note from Marvin Branagh, written in a depressed scrawl, reads, "Be glad you're not here, rookie." No wonder he was upset that Leon arrived. Chief Brian Irons is one of Resident Evil's more underrated monsters. Protect and serve, more like infect and serve, am I right? You know what, I'm going to make that the title of this chapter. Wesker takes center stage, Spencer's spectre looms large, and the Ashford twins are a personal favourite, but Irons is a very human beast because he doesn't seem to be in control like the others.
Sherry, tie her hands.
Why are you doing this?
Shut up. Tie her. Okay then, you tie her up now or she dies.
In 1998, Irons' appearance was framed like a jump scare. Unlocking his office, we were faced with a twisted picture. A dead woman splayed on his desk, clad in white. Irons sat behind her with a vacant stare. It was a horrifying image, but the stillness of the situation made it seem strange. Like a warped sense of calm descended. Irons was a survivor, he was the chief of police. It looks like he tried to save someone. So why does all of this feel so wrong? And why is he talking like that?
I was told to look after her, but I failed miserably. Just look at her. She was a true beauty.
The initial implication here is that Irons has just snapped, but peeling back layer after layer shows us that he was always a bad guy. We later find a file telling us that he was arrested for rape in university. He monologues about how Raccoon is his city, his town, and as we learn more and more about his corruption, it becomes clear that it wasn't just about money for him. It was control, a need to conquer. A secret elevator takes Claire down to a dungeon, his sanctuary, a medieval chamber with blazing torches and a slab in the center. It's where he brought animals to turn into taxidermy. Where's the woman from before? Did he bring her here? He picked her up awkwardly and her white gown hiked up, exposing the tight, creamy skin of her thighs. Irons forced his gaze away. Whatever harmless fantasies he'd had before, she was his responsibility now. He was her protector, her white knight. He rested his forehead on Beverly's shoulder and closed his tired eyes, slipping into an uneasy doze. Her cool flesh was like a balm against his feverish brow. Just like in the original game, Book Irons was always sick, even before the outbreak. We get numerous chapters from his perspective, and they offer a demented glimpse into how his mind works and how he schemes. He fantasizes about Beverly Harris, the mayor's daughter, the woman in white, and a character who goes by a different name in the remake, Catherine Warren. In the dark of his office, as he nestles into her, he thinks about how she once called him Uncle Brian as a child. It's unclear if Beverly's been bitten or shot, but the red that's soaking through from a wound in her stomach is bad news for Irons. The book tells us that she was meant to be his responsibility when the outbreak happened, and it's her death that was the last straw for his sanity. She speaks to him, even though she's dead. Claire didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the wistful longing in his tone and his shining, hungry stare made her skin crawl. The way he was looking at the dead girl. You're imagining things, she thought. He's the chief of police, not some perverted lunatic. Oh, well, do I have news for you, Claire. Book Irons isn't just a corrupt, psychopathic nonce, he's also an idiot with an ego that expands as you turn the page. He thinks that Claire is an Umbrella spy and the zombie hordes are all for him. An outbreak orchestrated by Umbrella to stop him from squealing on them. So, if that's what we had with limited pixels and a book tie-in, what does the remake give us?
Hello?
Good to see you again, Claire. We've got unfinished business.
What are you talking about?
Don't waste my fucking time! Bring me the pendant, or Sherry dies.
Irons smacking Claire and stealing Sherry is a solid first impression for a villain, but it's not nearly as powerful as the stop in your tracks and wallow moment of the original. The file documenting his crimes in university is also missing. That perversion is implied when we find Beverly Harris later, and his taxidermy log talks about jacking off while slicing open a tiger. No, really. But there's a sharper focus on his love for hunting and open corruption here. An explicit connection is drawn between that and his success as a cop. Part of the reason why he locked down the RPD was so he could hunt the surviving police officers. He dreams up sick games where he'll convince them to shoot each other to save themselves. We find his plan to hunt the mayor's daughter. That stop in your tracks moment doesn't come in the form of cutscene, but in his personal diary.
Pig, female, 22 years old. Place of capture, Raccoon City. Length, 5 foot 3 inches. Weight, 110 pounds. The specimen's body is soft, sweet, and white all over, and it's all mine, forever.
We find this in his office, a space agonizingly recreated for the remake. A stuffed Siberian tiger sits in the hallway, guarding his private gallery. Unlike in 1998, his office is also a save room, and yuck, this is not a safe space. Irons is terrifying because he's simultaneously larger than life, what with the taxidermy and the hunting of people, and believable. He's a corrupt cop under the thumb of a private corporation. Those guys exist. Umbrella. An Umbrella conspiracy to destroy me all along. Irons sat on a scarred, stained table in the sanctuary, his special private place. He wondered how long it would be before the young woman came for him. The one with the athletic body. Was it so far-fetched to think they'd unleashed their virus to get to him, to rob him of his power, and then sent a scantily clad girl to rub his nose in it? Why else was she so attractive? They knew his weaknesses and were exploiting them, trying to keep him from attaining even a shred of dignity. In fact, Remake Irons is so blasé about his corruption that his sanctuary, the place where he slices and dices his victims, isn't buried behind secret puzzles in a strange elevator anymore. It's now just a room in the Raccoon City orphanage. It kills the unsettling gothicism of that reveal to chill us with how standardized this space looks. This wasn't his own dark, sinister secret. There's an implication that people knew about this and looked the other way. Something worse was happening in the orphanage.
Where's that?
In the neighborhood. You'll find it.
Sherry all right?
For now.
I swear, you bastard, if you hurt her.
Thematically, Leon's campaign is all about his determination to protect and serve, even in the face of horror. But ironically, he fails. He doesn't just fail once, he fails 5 times. Ben is crushed by Mr. X, Marvin turns into a zombie, the gun shop owner, Kendo, either kills his daughter or is eaten by her. Annette Birkin dies, and Ada eventually fakes her death. To reinforce the horror of the game, his role as a police officer offers no boons, no strategies, and no buffs. Raccoon City is a battle between order and chaos. Chaos is winning. Umbrella's evil can't be contained. People look to Leon for answers because of his status as a cop, but Leon can't offer any because he's as helpless as everyone else. In the face of the outbreak, the Raccoon police are either useless, dead, or corrupt. Hell, even the remains of stars are still in Iron's pocket. We find a recruitment poster with Brad Chicken Heart Vickers on it. Helping people like them, that's why I joined the force, Leon says. He just wants to help people, man, and he never gets to. It is Claire who saves someone in Sherry, and it's Claire who's exposed to the RPD's corruption in Irons. In the first 10 minutes, the police station beckons with bright letters, illuminated against the murky skybox like a halo. It screams safe place during the drenched panic of the city streets. But the longer we stay here, the longer it becomes clear that we never should have come. It was doomed long before the first zombie. Just look at who was in charge. For the next few seconds, I'm going to sew my mouth shut and let you listen to something. Listen to that mechanical, stuttering clomp of a theme. The beat shatters like furniture breaking under a titanic boot. These sounds herald Tyrant 103, Mr. X. When Leon and Claire return to the RPD for their fuse hunt, he ambushes us.
Jesus Christ!
For fans who kept a close eye on previews and E3 presentations, this reveal was unfortunately spoiled, but in the vacuum of the game, it's the best introduction a Resident Evil monster has ever gotten, and it carves our psychology. There was already narrative tension because we got a glimpse of him earlier. A massive hand popped Ben's skull, but in the time since, that tension has grown. In the preceding minutes, we're running on a high because we've finally doused the fire in this hallway. We've solved the puzzle, we're conquering the RPD, and we're about to uncover some new secret or solution. That peak is key because it maximizes the terror of Mr. X's appearance. There's no cutscene, no wrenching of player control. In gameplay, we turn this corner and, without announcement, Mr. X arrives. His brute strength showcased by how deftly he rips the helicopter out of the way. Because the corridor is so narrow, we are forced to flee. If we try to push past him to get where we need to go, he will pummel us. Gameplay emulates emotion. For the rest of the game, Mr. X will stalk us. He's here to mop up survivors who know too much and retrieve the G-Virus for the Umbrella Corporation. His terror is thematic as well as mechanical. Umbrella seem to have perfected the tyrant we saw back in Resident Evil 1, and worst of all, are willingly deploying it. They're not just making bioweapons, they're unleashing them. Especially here in the RPD, he is relentless as he chases us around the station while Leon uses the club key, gets the lever, heads to the library to move the bookshelves, does the clock tower puzzle, and Jesus Christ mate, leave me alone! Claire could feel the violence radiating off him in invisible waves. Black eyes, black and rimmed with red, like lava-filled pits in a misshapen white boulder. Blank, but not at all blind. His gaze found hers, and he raised one meaty, clenched fist. It was a soulless machine. Bloodless flesh that could ignore pain or embrace it. Terminator, Frankenstein, she thought. Mr. X. SD Perry's comparison to the Terminator is a solid one. Concept art gave us a Mr. X with a gun, supposedly an attempt to make him more human in his threat, but that was thankfully cut. His metallic theme song echoes from far off and grows louder as he approaches. Years on, it's easy to think he has a little speaker attached to his belt, but in the moment, that doesn't matter. His footsteps echo as he patrols on floors above, and when that theme bleeds in, it slices away any confidence we might have while backtracking areas that we've cleared. If we open fire, he grows noticeably frustrated, pursuing us faster, lashing out further. He is especially threatening in areas where we haven't cleared out zombies or lickers, because running away from him becomes a full-blown obstacle course where the obstacles have teeth. X can never outpace us, and we can circle crates and desks to keep away from him while we figure out our next move. But the RPD is overrun with things that can slow us down. There are no signs of weakness. He doesn't bleed, dropping to one knee and taking a minute to rest. In the original, downing him would reward us with ammunition. There are no rewards here except 30 precious seconds that let you scramble together some distance. He doesn't speak, he doesn't roar, doesn't shriek like the other creatures. Every single one of his sounds come from action. An approach, a lunge, a stamp. He's decidedly different from every other monster we'll encounter, and as a fun aside, his footsteps aren't footsteps, they're different recorded sounds mixed together because Capcom didn't think standard treads would give the same impact. In an interview with PC Gamer, the game director Kazunori Kadoi said,
"If Tyrant loses track of the player, he is technically still searching, but will walk in random routes. He basically acts the same as if a real person is tracking you down, checking each section of the area and meticulously moving from one area to another. However, if he hears something nearby or potentially catches a glimpse of the player in the distance, he will start aggressively tracking towards that direction. If he doesn't discover the player after a certain period of time, his senses start to grow more sensitive, making it easier to track you down."
Some places are safe from him. For example, he doesn't ambush us in the clock tower, the STARS office, or safe rooms. Sometimes that's because he can't fit through doors. You can see me cheesing him here in the east hallway. But generally, that gameplay-ism is just to minimize frustration. The clock tower hasn't been designed for an enemy encounter, it's far too claustrophobic, and there would be no way to circle around him. The same goes for the STARS office, though I especially like that because it means the home of Chris and Jill acts as a safe, comforting space. We are never in danger here. There's security in the spiritual company of old heroes. That security is ripped away in the main hall. In the first scenario, it's a haphazard but inviting area because it's well lit and Marvin is here with an item box and typewriter. Most importantly of all, there are no zombies. Eventually, that will change. Once Marvin turns and X attacks, the main hall becomes a sprawling lair where monsters groan out of shadows and T-103 can follow us over 2 floors. There's also some blatant teleporting if you're looking for it, but these cracks in the system don't make Mr. X any less terrifying. As Leon returns to the parking lot with his fuse, the monster appears, triggered by solving a puzzle. Though that triggering is given contextual sense. Mr. X responds to sounds, and powering up the jail cells is heralded by thunders, clanks, and zombie roars. The same goes for later when he appears in Nest. He bursts into the lab once we release the herbicide, and a chorus of shrieks from dying monsters bring him running. He is the remake's greatest achievement, terror incarnate, taking something cool from 1998 and making him so powerful and memorable that no other tyrant has come close since. Especially remake Nemesis. Oh, Nemesis. X didn't stalk the player like this back in the day. He was launched into the police station via military capsule and appeared intermittently. Including his boss fight and cutscenes, he was in the game for barely 10 minutes, but still left one hell of an impression because he was unlike anything players had seen before. He didn't follow us through doors, even though the original already had a killer jump scare where zombies interrupted a door transition, but what he did do was crash through a wall. After Claire gets the cog for the clock tower, he storms in, and when we think we've locked him behind a loading screen, boom. Because his arrivals were all scripted, downing him was even less effective. Here I am blasting away, and then less than a second later, he's back. It was a very different kind of horror because the scripting made him unreliable. You didn't know when the game was going to throw him at you. At least in the remake, you can cling to the knowledge that he's always there, so you shouldn't relax. His scripted appearances just build on that, because the means of knocking him back escalate.
This is getting old. Saving your ass, that's twice.
I didn't realize you were keeping score.
Look, this isn't a game.
You gotta be kidding me.
Collecting the keycard is just a prologue to danger. Mr. X launches himself at Leon, and Ada saves our life for a second time, ramming a truck into him. She's bought us some time. Sherry Birkin isn't an orphan, but she might as well be, and she'll soon adopt that role literally. A little girl who just wants her parents to be around more, and whose heart aches because instead they're down in Umbrella's lab cooking up a sin. Back in the 90s, Noboru Sugamura was brought on to the Resident Evil team after the 1.5 version got scrapped. He first acted as a script doctor, but after tearing apart that original tale, he took to the typewriter himself, mutating and evolving character arcs completely and tying the narrative back to Resi 1 in a more overt way. He's responsible for a lot of the story we eventually got into, such as Claire's throughline, Marvin Branna's turn as a zombie, and Brian Iron's villainous twist. But Sherry was all Hideki Kamiya, and Sugamura barely changed her plot. The only shift was the later beat, where she gets infected with the G-Virus. Jesus, Noboru, who hurt you? Once Claire escapes the RPD, she heads out to rain-battered streets. Brian Irons has taken Sherry to a nearby orphanage, and we shift perspectives to play as her as she tries to escape from him. She is the beating, broken heart of the game. The heroism comes from Claire and Leon, the villainy comes from William, Annette, and Irons, and the mystery comes from Ada, but the tragedy is all Sherry. She is the only person in our core group of 4 who loses something tonight: her family and her innocence.
Don't worry, Sherry. It'll be all over soon.
There has to be a way out of here.
The Raccoon City orphanage is creepy. Sherry shouldn't be here because no child should be here. It's the most fucked up thing Umbrella's ever done. And we're talking about a company that abducted homeless women to impregnate with monsters. The extra sick side of Umbrella is typically reserved for extra material found outside of the games, but Resident Evil 2 Remake makes it text. This wasn't an orphanage, not really. It was a containment unit for test subjects. Umbrella scientists would come, pretend they were adopting a child, and would snatch them away for testing. A morbid, tragic irony hangs over every room. The children were hoping to be adopted. Their hope led to a gruesome death. Doodles, drawings, and playrooms reinforce the innocence of Umbrella's victims. Diary entries are written with poor spelling. A multi-person shower conjures images of children huddled together like prisoners. We creep by cribs, stacked on top of each other, showing us that babies were here. They now lie empty. It all lies empty. As you explore, you might be relieved that zombie children aren't scuttling around in the shadows. I'm reminded of how Dead Space introduced necromorph babies, and that still gives me nightmares, but that relief might die when you realize why that's the case. A child broke back into the orphanage after being injected with the T-virus. That meant there was a risk all the children would get infected. Irons ordered the murder of every child as a precaution. Claire will later find unmarked graves outside the front. No wonder Raccoon City is overrun. Between the rats getting the T-virus, a G-monster on a rampage, children zombies escaping, and any remnants of the Spencer mansion stumbling into town, it is a miracle this didn't happen sooner. Irons wasn't just a sponsor of the orphanage, he was the director. It makes you wonder what happened at the women's charities he worked with, because he is personally responsible for all of this horror. And he's hunting us.
You need to learn to listen.
Leave me alone! Just please!
Time to teach some manners. You little bitch! You're gonna pay for this!
This sequence is unique to the remake and a fantastic improvement over the lackluster Sherry section in the original. There, we ran up a walkway, agonizingly pushed some crates, and ran back along a walkway. Ada would later have an identical sequence. It didn't add spice, but for the sake of variety, you could say it added a bit of salt. Playing as Sherry especially kept the fear because she had no way to defend herself against the zombies mulling about on the walkway, but it does not compare to being hunted by Irons. That's especially true as a book reader, because his implied noncery adds another layer of creepiness. Even without that addition, Sherry's fear is contagious, not least because we're brought down to her height, so everything, especially Irons, looms large. His animation and characterization makes his role as a hunter more visceral. He rants, he calls Sherry a bitch, he slams into furniture and waves his torch around erratically. By playing as her, we get to understand and believe how Sherry survived as long as she has. She's smart, she's brave, she's resilient. Like the book says, she's 12, you know, I'm not a baby. It's a much more self-sufficient characterization than we got in the original because the remake avoids the escort mission sections, but none of her vulnerability gets lost in translation. Ironically, Remake's Sherry is more aligned with S.D. Perry's Sherry. Claire had taken her gun out. She smiled, but Sherry could see it wasn't a happy smile. As she bent down and hugged her, Sherry felt almost sick with helpless anger. Claire was going to tell her not to worry, that the monster wouldn't come, that nothing bad would happen. And then she was going to leave anyway. Stupid, grown-up lies. The escort sections with Sherry were mildly frustrating. If you're a fan of the OG, you might be like me and haunted by the phrase,
I can't leave Sherry alone. I can't leave Sherry alone. I have to go back for Sherry.
But it forced a particular mindset. Sherry couldn't protect herself, so Claire had to do that for her, embracing her big sister protector role in gameplay. Sherry would even hold Claire's hand if we stopped to rest. If we zap over to Leon's campaign, there's a very different game feel when it comes to Ada Wong, because Ada is a badass. She can protect herself. In fact, when it comes to zombie fights, we can hang back and let her kill them for us. Thanks, Ada. While Sherry embodies the tragedy of Claire's campaign, Robert Kendo's brief appearance embodies it for Leon.
I'm just passing through. I'm gonna ask you to lower that weapon.
I tell you what, you're gonna turn around and go right back out the way you came in.
The cop and the spy cut through his gun shop as they head to the sewers, greeted by ransacked shelves. The windows aren't broken and the doors aren't locked, so where did all the weaponry go? According to a note exclusive to the Nintendo 64 version, Kendo handed them out for free when the outbreak began. It didn't do any good. His daughter has been bitten. He's given some brief but honest characterization in the remake. He doesn't just show up as a random guy who dies and gives us the shotgun way too early. Ada's cold calculation and preparedness are on full show in the gun shop. She picks the lock with a mysterious device. She tries to kill Kendo's daughter the second she shambles into view. She doesn't consider it murder, barely considers it killing. Terminate, she says. We need to terminate before she turns. Even though Noboru Sugamura brought decades of writing experience to Resident Evil 2, he still wrote archetypes. The mad scientist, the lost child, the rookie cop, and in Ada Wong we have the femme fatale.
Why is remake Ada in heels rather than her flats from the original?
Because shut up, that's why. Just like with Claire, SD Perry wonderfully insists on explaining and contextualizing Rezi's colourful character designs. Claire's bare legs are because she left in a hurry, but Ada's cocktail dress, a look so iconic she wore it years later in Resident Evil 4, is given purpose on the page. She was meant to meet Ben Bertolucci for dinner when everything went to hell. She was planning to interrogate him the easy way before the zombies showed up. Because the book lets us see her perspective, her archetype gets a bolt-on. In SD Perry's work, she's not just a femme fatale, she's a femme fatale with a heart. When she first meets Leon, she considers just killing him but chooses not to, just because she's sick of death and the whole mission has started to stink. She's tired when we pick up with her, and her exposure to Leon softens her edges. Feeling bad about things she couldn't control wasn't Ada Wong's style. It wasn't how she'd gotten to the top of her trade. Now wasn't the best time to be analysing her empathy skills. People died, it was the way of the world. And if she'd learned anything in the course of her life, it was that agonising over that particular truth was pointless. Meanwhile, Leon doesn't trust her, but his defining character trait is that he's determined to see the good in people. Leon swore to himself that he wouldn't assume anything else about Ada Wong. She was alternately flirtatious and standoffish. But in spite of her confusing behaviour and probable duplicity, he liked her. She was smart and confident, she was beautiful. He assumed there was a good, decent person beneath that contradictory facade. Remake Ada is more emotional than what we had in the past. She gets frustrated more easily. She finds Leon's naivety irritating. These elements were there but glazed over back in 1998 because mystery was the goal. Aside from one scene where she shows a hint of vulnerability, she was unreadable by design because her purpose was to be cucumber cool. To return to SD Perry's interpretation, she's written like a woman who borders on sociopathic. Something had changed for her when Leon had taken the bullet in her stead, and she didn't know how to change it back. Even worse, she didn't know that she wanted to change it back. It was like the birth of a new feeling, some emotion that she couldn't name but seemed to fill her up. It was unsettling, uncomfortable, and yet somehow not altogether unpleasant. Now, in 2019, her emotional side is at the forefront of her character. I'm not sure if losing the iciness necessarily works for a new player, but as a legacy fan, I really liked this reading of Ada because it makes her more human. And clearly her actor Jolene Anderson agrees. Speaking to Residents of Evil, she said,
"With the remake, we still wanted to keep people on their toes. Every time there was a vulnerable, more emotional scene, we had to figure out how genuine are these feelings. I love that vulnerability between her and Leon in this game."
Shame then that the remake ditches a key part of her character history. Despite more screen time, more cutscenes, and more lines, there's something missing from remake Ada. Her relationship with the umbrella scientist, John. This is something that carries over from Resident Evil 1. We found a letter written by John, his dying words. His name and Ada's combined was a password we needed, and in 1998, she claimed she was in Raccoon City looking for him. The scene where she tells Leon about him is where we see her armor momentarily crack. And the beauty there is we aren't sure if it's just another story to manipulate Leon or a tender beat where two survivors bond over heartbreak. The night before, Leon broke up with his girlfriend and drowned his sorrows. His hangover was why he's late to his first day at the RPD. In the book, Ada and John are pitched more like a fling that was convenient for her. Part of the job. Her cover story was set, a young woman looking for her boyfriend, an umbrella scientist. That part was almost true. In fact, it had been her brief relationship with John Howe 10 months before that had landed her this job. More of a one-night stand, really, and not a very good one at that. But John had thought, otherwise, and his connection to Umbrella, though it had probably killed him, had turned out to be a lucky break for her. Cutting this from the remake, frankly, sucks. Linking Ada to Resi 1 is a nice way to keep our core cast tied together, albeit loosely. It also gives the moment when she confides in Leon weight because she's giving a specific, factual detail about herself. It's something we can cling to as we try to figure her out.
Annette Birkin.
She's who we're looking for?
Not much time. Need to dispose of it.
We're here for the G-Virus.
That's not gonna happen.
Down in the sewers, Annette Birkin shoots Leon and Ada leaves him to go after her. Annette's the mission. She knows where the G-Virus is. Just like with Sherry, playing as Ada in the remake is a significant improvement. Gameplay teaches us about Ada's spycraft rather than moving crates. Can you tell I hate the crates? Her gameplay gimmick is her EMF visualizer that lets her hack electronic devices, a mechanical explanation for how she's gotten around so easily and surpassed all of the RPD's riddles and bullshit. Ada Wong doesn't waste time solving puzzles. She's carrying cheat codes in her pocket. Bringing Mr. X into the sewer makes everything immediately more interesting, especially because he's placed near a point where we need to use the EMF scanner before he catches us. Just because Ada's a spy doesn't mean she's immune to the horror. The gameplay also encourages us to hate Annette because she's an obstacle for the player as well as a narrative one. She joins the pack of Resi villains who like to toy with us, setting a trap inside an incinerator with a tricky timed puzzle where we need to use our gadget to blow our way out. If Sherry's sequence strengthens Irons as a villain, Ada's strengthens Annette. But, speaking of Irons...
Your fault!
What?
It took too long!
What happened? Oh god. Get off me! Oh my god!
Brian Irons' death might be less gruesome in the remake, but no less deserved. Sherry Birkin melts his face, and William Birkin impregnates him with the G-Virus. It bursts out of him, squealing and mewling, and scurries into the night. When Claire makes it inside, Sherry is missing. Her trail leads to the sewer. Oh god, this bit.
I don't like the sound of that. Ada!
Even in the original release, the sewers are nobody's favourite part of Resident Evil 2. The labyrinthian design makes it difficult to get around. The stone tunnels and rivers of waste are less interesting than the decadent statues and art pieces of the police station. Umbrella's control of Raccoon City spreads past the police to utility infrastructure. The sanitation committee is run by them, so typically it's a pressure cooker waiting to blow. Deep down here is a tram that will take us to Nest, Umbrella's lab, and many, many monsters. Zombies crawl through shit and sludge, the G-Virus is spreading, but they're not where I want to start.
For a while we were thinking, shall we just cut the alligator altogether? It's too difficult.
Yoshiaki Hidebayashi told the Daily Star.
But we knew there'd be fan backlash. We knew we had to create one of those perfect fan favourite moments. We're competing with people's memories, and that's really hard. Trying to make a convincing scene where a guy with a knife takes on an alligator, that's really silly. People don't remember it as silly because the whole game was groundbreaking at the time, but that moment was ridiculous.
The alligator boss fight is butchered in Resident Evil 2 Remake, a seismic sewer gator that's devoured bodies riddled with the T-Virus. There are a lot of changes that I can overlook because of the strengths elsewhere, but relegating the alligator to a cameo appearance, a quick-time event, and an on-rails chase is beyond disappointing, and Hidebayashi's explanation is downright insulting. Too silly? Do you know what's silly? An 8-foot mutant in a fedora. Playing the original in 2025, that confrontation is harrowing, not silly. The tunnel is claustrophobic and short, so we don't have much time to figure out what to do. At no point is control ripped away from the player, so we have full ownership of how we survive the horror. It swallows bullets, so we need to find this gas canister and line up a shot to blow it up. The irony is that the structure and length of the fight is basically the same in the remake. We're still outrunning it and we're still shooting a gas canister, but the framing and the tone of the thing is ruined because we're not outwitting the alligator, we're waiting for a button cue. Sincerely, this is goofier than the original's alligator fight. It roared, swinging its head from side to side, blood erupting from its grinning face in buckets. But still, it came, lumbering forward, dragging its armored tail from the pool of slime behind it. We're even teased during the first half of the sewer. We see it flash by some bars, there are rumbles and earthquakes. Leon wonders what that could possibly be to build up suspense and get fans hyped for the upcoming boss. But when that tension pops, it's with a whimper, not a bang. Here's hoping these guys don't remake Resi 1 again, eh? Oh, we can't do the giant snake, that was too goofy. Pff, sharks in my Resident Evil game? Cut it. What do you mean you're gonna shoot a plant? QuickTime events for everyone. Wait, no, hear me out. How about instead of a Jill sandwich, now it's a Jill croque monsieur? The alligator isn't the only creature the game hacks away. Cockroaches, a moth, crows and spiders are a victim too. In the original, 8-legged beasts populate a couple of rooms in the sewers, and just like in Resident Evil 1, their sudden appearance throws you off because it's unexpected. The remake robs us of the chance to see their thick, bristling legs and searching eyes in the RE engine. But here's the thing though, aside from the alligator and the spiders, I think these emissions are fine. Crows don't need to flap around this hallway in the remake because it's far more chilling to see a flaming zombie storming out of the crashed helicopter. This happens in that same corridor, and even when it comes to the lack of creepy crawlies, what they've been replaced with are far more grotesque. What's the difference between the Golgotha G virus and the Tyrant T virus? In his dying moments, William Birkin roars that it's his creation, but its origins go right back to the time of Oswald Spencer, originating with Lisa Trevor. The T-virus has a very particular side effect, necrosis. When a person is infected with it, they start to rot and decay, leading to the zombies that we see. The G-virus doesn't have that side effect because it repairs dead cells. It mutates the host in order to survive, creating monsters that are unrecognizable. You could say it's inspired by The Thing, or at least John Carpenter's version. Tentacles wriggle, lumps of flesh pulse and bulge, just like The Thing, it wants to spread, adopting an intense desire to reproduce. It will instinctively search out humans with DNA that closely matches its own, planning to implant an embryo in them. We learn this from a lab file written by Annette Birkin. With that knowledge, you'd think she'd be more worried about Sherry, but I guess she was too busy being the absolute worst. The sewers are infested with G. It crawls along the walls like veins. It piles high as stinking, bloody lumps of tissue. It doesn't just transform a person, it changes a space like a mold or fungus. As we slosh around in the sewer, it feels less like waste and piping, and more like the inside of an entity. And the G-adults compound that feeling and turn it into terror. The stream that gushed from its wide, flat face was alive, and the dozen or so crab-like creatures that tumbled out of the monster's gaping mouth like liquid seemed to know exactly where the threat was to their fetid, mutant womb. Where once this was a one-and-done boss that shuffled towards us, now it's an entire tribe of monsters. They hide under the water, waiting to pounce when we get close, determined to impregnate us with its children, a G embryo. They're sponges for bullets, so unless you have the chemical flamethrower or grenade launcher, their strange long heads will chomp down on Leon and Claire. If the adults are like The Thing, the embryos are like xenomorphs, burrowing down your throat and ripping out your abdomen like a chest burster. The G-virus took the Resident Evil series in a new horror direction, with writhing monsters and body horror that are more visceral and alien than the T-virus ever was. But T is still responsible for the most memorable monster in the sequel. The Lickers, or Inside-Out Men as Sherry calls them in the book, are the best monsters Resident Evil has ever created, and they peak in the remake. An unknown T-virus strain makes zombies mutate. They're the next stage of T evolution that messes with what we know about the T-virus. T victims shouldn't mutate like this. That's a side effect reserved for the G-virus. It's weird and dumb, but 90% of Resi is weird and dumb, so what are you gonna do? That's why we love it. What makes them so dangerous is their agility. They can cling to walls and ceilings. They move with incredible speed and have one hell of a reach, launching across a room with claws outstretched. Even if they're nowhere near you, even if you think you have enough distance, their long, razor-sharp tongue can lash out and catch you. They join the Hunters, X, and Nemesis as Umbrella's greatest achievement. Claire heard ragged breathing in the tick of talons on wood, thick and curved, the claws of a creature that couldn't exist. It was so impossible that she could only see it in pieces. the inflamed purple flesh of a naked, long-limbed creature, the puffed grey-white tissue of the partially exposed brain, the scar-rimmed holes where the eyes should have been. The beauty is in how their senses operate. They're blind, so rely on sound. Leon and Claire can get around them by moving very slowly and very quietly, but that's not always an option, especially if Mr. X is on our tail. Thankfully, they can't squeeze through doors, but later in Nest, they'll burst out of vents. Tension and panic creaturefied. In 1998, Capcom were looking at creative ways to make zombies more threatening than they were in the Spencer Mansion. They lunged at us in greater numbers, the impact of a citywide outbreak made into a mechanic. We see them rattle on gates, pounding and flapping into metal bars, mindlessly hunting for brains. With a carefully aimed shotgun blast, we could split them in half, and their torsos would crawl across the floor as they gushed blood, reaching out with gnarled hands. The remake takes that ethos and runs with it, giving us infected who aren't just obstacles or blockades, but active threats. They are spongy, with bullets to the torso barely registering, and a wide variety of health, so taking them down isn't predictable. They do quick little jittery staggers as they approach, making it difficult to keep our crosshairs on them. They can attack 2 at a time for double damage, pinning our heroes to the floor as they chomp down with hardened teeth. The punishment for getting grabbed isn't just a wound, but slowing us down because they can knock us to the floor. Ambushes actually mean something here outside of more numbers to circumvent. There isn't intention to their actions, they're just as mindless as they always were, but their animations make them more of a challenge and their threat is ever present. Sometimes they'll raise a hand in front of their face, throwing off potential headshots. They'll slump over tables to catch us. They'll shatter through unblocked windows. They're gooier, have greater reach, and more difficult to stop. Pieces fly off them as we empty our weapon, but even if we blast off legs and arms, they'll still find a way to chomp at our ankles. Without destroying the head, you can never be certain if they're really dead. Blood pools aren't as reassuring as they once were. When it comes to the zombies, that drip grows into a gushing stream. I just wish Leon would shut up.
What the hell?
It's not just that the repeated voice lines are grating, though they are, but sometimes he'll curse even though I've just killed a zombie. It makes me feel confused rather than tense or uncertain. Is the zombie really dead, Leon, or are you just yelling at the walls? Despite looking identical, the zombie dogs we'll see in the series from this point on are all technically different specimens from Resident Evil 1's Cerberus. Those dogs were genetically engineered by Umbrella for war. These ones are just rabid beasts that caught the T-virus by feasting on dead bodies. They're erratic and wriggly, with the over-the-shoulder perspective making their battles more difficult than fixed camera angles and auto-aim ever did. It seems like Umbrella scientists thought Henry Sarton had a good thing going actually, because they've tried to recreate his experiment from Resident Evil 1. Plant 42 lies dead in the Arklay Mountains. Plant 43 has taken over the Nest laboratory, answering the question, what happens when you take a carnivorous plant infected with the T-virus and let it shove seeds down a person's throat? IV zombies. Their corpses puppeted by sentient plants, hunting for more victims to spread its seed. They're contained to Nest, making the space feel unique, and while this concept is pulled straight from the original, 43's connection to 42 comes from the remake. There's no explicit connection in the 1998 edition. This plant isn't even given a name, and inexplicably, it's never a threat in S.D. Perry's book. IVs are horrifying. Because the main greenhouse is overrun with plants, all of the leaves and greenery keep us on our toes. They drop from the ceiling and burst from branches, and they will just keep coming unless we burn them until they're black and crispy or shoot their bulbs off.
Ada, you said it yourself. It's a federal case. I don't
Leon,
have the authority.
Look at me. I'm a liability now. If I'm gonna finish this case, you're the last hope I've got.
I'm not just gonna leave you here. What if you're attacked? What if you need help?
Once we save her, Ada tells Leon a half-truth. She's here to retrieve the G-virus, that part's true, but claims she's doing it for the FBI. The virus is deep in Umbrella's Nest facility, and if we can grab it, she promises something like the Raccoon City outbreak will never happen again. When Ada asks if he's up for the mission, we see the beginnings of Leon's wise-cracking self. I think I can fit it into my schedule, he says. In the future, he'd go on to use sarcasm and humor as a trauma response. The naivety is still here, but we see the beginnings of his own personal evolution. Is this kiss a manipulation by Ada? Just like in 1998, it's uncertain. Combat too is uncertain because of the unpredictability of the monsters, but thankfully Leon has an arsenal at his disposal. The Matilda handgun, the shotgun, the flamethrower and the Magnum are his 4 staples, with the rocket launcher being saved for a cathartic final blast and the M19 handgun saved for his second run. That all-important interval between shots returns for the fire rate of his weapons, keeping the tension as Mr. X thrashes out with a huge fist. Ownership of fights is given to the player through exploration. Most of those optional puzzles and riddles reward us with hit pouches to expand our inventory, meaning we can carry more weapons or modifiers that make our firepower more useful. A stock for the handgun minimizes reloading, something that's super important when a zombie's closing the gap. A shotgun stock ups the fire rate, meaning lickers can't recover as quickly. All of the upgrades change the look of our guns, a visual signifier of our growing strength. Claire's weapons, however, are very different.
Do you know Sherry?
It's an impressive display of strength.
What happened to her?
We have to assess the situation.
Who are you? I'm Claire.
Claire and Sherry's reunion in the sewers is short-lived. Mr. X crashes into them and chases the pair deep into the tunnels. William Birkin, with the G-virus coursing through his veins, comes roaring out of the darkness and stabs X through the chest. Not to protect Sherry, but because he wants her all to himself. Fear seizes Sherry as her father looms over her, and as the floor collapses, she runs off to hide. Claire is knocked out, and when she comes to, Sherry is gone. Annette Birkin stands in her place, not concerned for her daughter, but instead taking notes on her husband's newfound strength. In the original, the book, and the remake, Sherry's safety is at the bottom of her list of priorities.
If you don't want to believe it, I don't really care. You're about to die anyway.
What was that? I can't hear you. Speak up. Though in 2019, we start to eventually see her maternal instinct poke out, but the legacy of the G-virus is all that matters to her. On the page, she gets high on a cocktail of painkillers after she's shot, and in her madness decides to blow up the lab, killing everything and everyone. She couldn't finish things until she saw William again, saw that he was back in the Umbrella facility. Destroying the lab wouldn't solve anything if he wasn't in the blast zone. They would find him again, extract the virus from his blood. And Umbrella won't have it, she thought. I'll die before I let them have it, so help me God. Her only consolation in all of this mad, horrible affair was that Umbrella hadn't managed to get their greedy hands on William's synthesis. Finding Sherry is no mean feat. Annette races off, leaving Claire to fend for herself. Thankfully, there's a shiny new gun to find. Claire also gets 7 weapons, all unique to Leon. The bowgun from the original has been cut, but I don't think anyone's gonna miss it because it's weak as hell, waiting patiently for Code Veronica to make it a good weapon with explosive bolts. The minigun is saved for the finale. The Quick Draw Army is reserved for her second run, but what's left brings a totally different game feel. Her revolver is easier to handle than Leon's Matilda, the crosshairs close faster, but it carries less bullets, so you need to make each shot count. It can eventually be upgraded with a reinforced frame to make it a little pocket rocket and deal serious damage. A JMB handgun can get a laser sight that helps with accuracy and flashes experienced players back to the days of Resident Evil 4. The grenade launcher is a Resi staple, but what makes it different to the 1998 version is that it only shoots 1 round at a time in a straight line. The original made it spray out. Incredible power is balanced by a slow fire rate and sluggish reload, so you need to be careful when you use it. Each shot counts. The Spark Shot is an experimental weapon designed by Umbrella, effectively a high-powered taser, and if you're careful with your aim, it can kill a G-adult in 1 hit. The tension lies with what happens after you blast it. You need to keep aiming, something that slows down your movement speed, and let the shot charge to maximum so it can explode on a monster. Even though it comes from the PS1 release, it's a much more tactile weapon here. Oh, and speaking of tension, hello submachine gun, you old tension killer. Into the box you go. The Quick Draw Army revolver is my favorite. For a start, Claire holds it differently to the Snubnose, a lovely attention to detail. The rounds are powerful, but it can only hold 6 at a time, and the reload rate is painful, where Claire needs to empty every single one and then load them back in piece by piece. That means its power doesn't break the game during boss fights. In line with how the A-B scenarios are handled once we hit the sewer, Sherry is locked in the same garbage disposal that Ada was in Leon's campaign. Before we can reach her, William Birkin returns for round 2 with a stellar boss encounter that is one hell of a panic simulator. He ambushes us in a nearby power room, rubble seals us in with him as he stabs down through the roof, fire spreads from some nearby canisters so the safe space closes in around us and we don't know what to do. How do I get out? How do we? An exit doesn't relieve that panic, it just builds on it. Birkin rips into the room, opening a way out, but what that means is he's now blocking the way and we have to fight through him. It all leads to a small walkway where the confrontation pulls from Resident Evil Code Veronica's Plane Tyrant. We need to weaken him long enough for a crate to swing round and smash him off the edge. It's just here, resources aren't an issue because boss arenas always have a few bullets tossed around. Despite that, Remake's fights still emphasize preparation, and conserving ammo is key because of how spongy the zombies are. Resource management is versatile. Self-defense weapons like grenades, flash grenades, and knives are here as self-defense weapons, but we get to choose if we want to use them when we're grabbed or if we're willing to take the hit so we can hold on to them for later. That choice extends to their general use as well because all 3 can be used freely whenever we like. For example, if you toss a flash grenade, it stuns a licker and makes them deaf, letting us sneak by quickly. Knives can be retrieved from zombies after we kill them, so long as we're willing to bend down and expose our soft bits from some gargling, sneering thing lurking nearby. Ammo crafting is brought in too. Doubling up on gunpowder gives us handgun bullets, adding the high-grade variety offers shotgun ammo. It all goes back to choice and using resources as a stress mechanic. What do you need more of? Handgun bullets for zombies, or acid rounds for bosses? Finding gunpowder doesn't offer that same psychological relief that finding packs of ammo do because A, it's only half of a combination you need to be useful, and B, it's rare you'll find 2 types of gunpowder in one room, so when you scoop one up, you sacrifice an inventory slot while hoping there's another batch nearby.
Sherry's been implanted. She can't be saved.
Are you fucking kidding me? You're her mother. Get in here!
You don't understand. William is still out there, and if I don't stop him,
this conversation is over.
With Birkin defeated for good this time, no, really, trust me, Claire saves Sherry. There's something wrong. She seems sick, infected with the G virus. Annette gives us our next objective. She's a bad mother, but even bad mothers struggle to see their child in pain. Her lab isn't far from here, she says. There should be an antidote. She leaves Sherry's fate in Claire's hands. Reckless, irresponsible, disgraceful, but a sign of trust. Claire takes charge, embraces her caretaker role, and takes Sherry to the cable car.
Oh, why are you doing this?
Because I care.
Thank you, Claire.
The callousness that Sherry has lived under for years leaks out here when she asks Claire earnestly why she's doing all of this. A little girl who feels so unwanted that she feels the need to ask someone why they would help her. Claire completes her evolution from Chris's sister to Redfield badass by giving Sherry her jacket. The last connection she has to Chris, and a costume change to show us her arc. The jacket was too big for her and it had some dirt on it, but it was the coolest thing Sherry thought she'd ever worn. For me. She wants me to have it. Why? She croaked. I can tell you're scared, Claire said firmly. I've had this jacket for a long time, and when I wear it, I feel like I can kick ass. Like nothing can stop me. My brother has a leather jacket with the same design on the back, and he kicks ass, but he got the idea from me. Claire might feel like a badass, but when it comes to zombies, lickers, and Ivies, oh my, I feel like a little cowardly baby boy. The combat juggles distance and accuracy, despite the over-the-shoulder perspective giving us a more focused view of our enemies. It keeps the panic palpable because of how small and sensitive the aiming reticle is. Even the slightest nudge spreads it like a gaping maw, increasing the chances of a misfire and wasting one of those precious bullets. Because the reticle is small and so prone to having an aneurysm, it undermines the rational belief that keeping your distance is always the best strategy. Simply being closer to a zombie increases the chance of an all-important headshot, or better yet, an elbow or knee. While moving and firing is now an option, a stand-and-shoot playstyle is encouraged by that sensitivity. It's a clever way for the game to achieve a similar, trotting beat to the rhythm of its fights while bringing us closer to the action. We also can't reload in our inventory anymore because the priority is tactility. Distance is necessary, not just for firing, but for preparing to fire. And that's not the only way it harbors tension. Shh. Careful. Watch your step. The basement level of Nest has massive claw marks on the walls. Are those zombies dead? What killed them? There have to be lickers down here, but I'm not sure where they are. Any sound could set them off. Ah, Jesus God! There are a couple of cans in this room that are designated with specific, loud sounds that activate if we walk into them. They don't bring lickers running because it's a massive fake out. They're being saved for a few minutes later once we turn the power back on. But still, it's enough to burst your heart. So while Leon pushes forward to the finale, I want to talk about how the game keeps us on the edge of our seat.
Dr. Birkin, you'll come along with us quietly.
You think I didn't know you were coming? This is my life's work. I'm not handing over anything.
We have our orders, Dr. Birkin.
Nest, Umbrella's primary laboratory in the heart of Raccoon City, an astonishing example of their reach, power, and preparation. Down here, William and Annette Birkin worked tirelessly to create the Golgotha virus, but Birkin got greedy. Either because he was spooked by the destruction of the Spencer estate, or he simply wanted to make millions, he planned to sell G to the US military. Umbrella isn't alone in pursuing bioweapons. This goes right to the top. Umbrella's private army were sent in for Operation Nest Wrecker. Their goal was simple: apprehend Birkin and retrieve the G virus. But an itchy trigger finger doomed everyone. The T virus spilled out of the facility and Birkin injected himself with the G virus. Not just to save his own life, but to get revenge. But he didn't stop there though, he went one step further. Birkin isn't purely a G mutation, he's a combination of both the Golgotha and the Tyrant virus. We see him pick up a briefcase, devour the contents, and then throw it to the ground. Seconds later, rats pick up the T virus and will eventually spread it into the city. This is the beginnings of the Raccoon City outbreak. Operation Nest Wrecker shows us how the game masters narrative tension. Events are teased, like the licker scrambling across an outside window, or hinted at in cryptic ways. Bodies of soldiers lie like breadcrumbs throughout the facility. We can trace them right back to the sewer, but there are more than ever in the lab. A figure in a hazmat suit sits bloated and hunched over, showing the early stages of Plant 43's infection. Bizarre power sources whirl at the bottom of Nest's cylindrical central chamber. A means of powering the facility, but a catalyst for Annette's big bomb. The lab is much cleaner and more white than in the OG. Shades well lit, so it's all the better to stain with blood. The original game flagged that it was built on top of an old chemical factory, so it was filled with rusting dark metal and extended to a smelting chamber. It made it seem like Umbrella had built on top of the space. Remake gives us a full foundational overhaul. It's hard to believe anything was once here before. Umbrella have completely excavated the underground, and Nest is now all there is. The evil is institutional. It stank like death, but worse, there was an atmosphere of something darker, something amoral, evil. They performed experiments here, created a zombie plague here, created a monstrous demon, murdered an entire city. Whatever they meant to do, this was evil on a grand scale. The catwalk stretched over what had to be 60 or 70 feet of open space. The bottom lost to shadow. Our journey here is insane, so once again highlights Umbrella's paranoia. An underground lab that stretches into hell, accessed by an underground tram built into the sewer that's connected to a secret elevator in the police station. It's mad. Somebody called George Trevor. I think he's got competition. We get the chance to see Nest as more of a lived-in space. Bunks and a canteen are just off from the entrance. We learn the names of scientists and doctors. One of them, Dr. Wayne, thought he was too clever to die, a detail saved for a B playthrough. ID wristbands dominate our exploration, so we get to learn how they normalized the insane security measures. Every room brings with it tension because of how the scientific, clinical lighting contrasts the inky darkness. When you open a door, you don't know what you're going to get. Pitch blackness or bright exposure. With an emphasis on believability and fluidity, some of the old tricks from classic Resi were chucked. Door transitions are gone because it would kill the anxiety of Mr. X chasing you, or zombies following you into a room. But modern Resi finds a clever workaround. Doors aren't our transition anymore. Light is. Leon and Claire now take a beat before pulling out their torch when passing from a bright room to a dark room. As our eyes and the game adjusts, there are a couple of seconds of painful waiting before we can see ahead of us. That's plenty of time for a liquor to scuttle into view or Mr. X to round a corner. Vines snap as they try to contain automatic doors. The entrance shutters open slowly, showcasing maximum security while forcing us to slow our pace without wrestling control. But that environmental tension extends well past Nest and back into the rest of the game. In the sewers, there's a zombie draped over some piping. How did he get up there? Is Mr. X around? The kennels have dogs banging up against the bars, frothing and feral, desperate to rip into us. Well, they're gonna burst open soon. A series of jail cells have zombies slavering against the bars. Every flag from crimson to scarlet is waving frantically that when we eventually turn the power back on, those doors will open and we'll be ambushed. But that expectation is subverted. The zombies still come in waves, but the true danger comes from X's unexpected arrival. The morgue forces us to open drawer after drawer, some of which have bodies. Which one's going to jump out and grab us? The question isn't if, but when. Ownership heightens that tension. To go back to the dogs in the kennel, we can shoot them while they're trapped in those cages, so there's less of them when the attack does come. One place where that ownership is dampened is with the ink ribbons. Now they're relegated to hardcore mode, a setting that brings a more brutal fight with the tyrant and even spongier zombies, something you'd think is impossible, but I promise you, it isn't. As an ink ribbon defender, that is frustrating. I would like the option to bring them into a standard playthrough without needing to give in to masochism. Birkin and X, as our two tyrants, bring a very particular kind of narrative tension that would go on to define Resident Evil as a horror series. Back in 1998, Birkin laid the foundation of the Resi monster that just keeps coming back trope. While this would eventually get out of hand by the time we get to Resident Evil 6, Derek Simmons anyone? The narrative explanation makes Birkin feel special. The G-Virus just keeps mutating. Death is merely a setback.
You called this thing William. Why?
It shouldn't have been like this. It's Umbrella's fault, this whole mess.
You're Umbrella too. You're telling me you weren't involved in this?
Once we retrieve the G-Virus from Birkin's lab, he attacks and Annette runs in, blasting acid rounds at him. She tells us that Ada's not FBI, but a mercenary here to steal and sell the G-Virus. Leon is stunned, but that'll need to wait. We've got a monster to slay. Why eyeballs? Why is so much of Birkin's design focused on them? Why do they pop and wiggle and divide their status as weak points? They're the only recognizable part of Birkin's anatomy by the time he evolves into his fourth form, so there's a sensitivity we feel to bursting them. The rest of him has been split and mangled, with his arms reduced to stubs inside gigantic hands, not made up of human fingers, but writhing, thick tentacles and protruding bones. The remake takes Hideki Kamiya's 1998 pitch for Birkin and transforms it into something that would keep anyone awake, especially a famously anxious game director who hates horror and thinks hands are creepy. Oh hi Kamiya! Battling him here is tense as hell. A wheel-shaped arena is laid out where we can get trapped in the spokes. Birkin has wide slashing attacks that are difficult to dodge if you don't anticipate them, and he will rip apart the arena, launching parts at us and coating the floor with fire. In the original, that arena was 8-shaped, and he bashed into the room as Leon waited on an elevator. There was less build-up, less announcement, and I think when it comes to the fear, that introduction works much better as a result. But the way Remake handles it here lays the groundwork for a later spurt of panic. Birkin feels like a final boss, but he's the prelude to Mr. X. As Annette slaps the self-destruct sequence, Leon confronts Ada about her intentions. She's deceived us every step of the way, and he doesn't know what to do. With no options and an explosion imminent, he reaches for a semblance of sanity.
I really hoped it wouldn't end up like this.
So that's all this was? I was just some pawn to you?
Look, I'm just doing my job.
And I'm doing mine, so drop that damn gun! I'm taking you in.
Take her where? The police station's about to blow. It's a clumsy line that I think undermines his growth. Tonight, Leon has learned repeatedly how helpless institutions like the police are in the face of monsters both alive and undead. He realizes he's going to need to evolve past the role of rookie cop if he's going to save anyone. Ada doesn't shoot, but before the pair can escape, Annette blunders in with a raised gun. As she opens fire, Ada falls over the edge to the bottomless pit of Nest. Ada told herself that she didn't deserve Leon Kennedy's good opinion anyway. For the first time in years, since she'd been a very little girl, she felt a sting of tears and hated him for it. For making her hate herself. As tense as the confrontation is, I prefer the simplicity of the original. There, we don't get to see Ada choose not to shoot. The tension remains in the scene because she doesn't relent, and after she falls over the edge, we're faced with a blunt, poignant button on her death.
It's Ada's gun. There are no rounds in the magazine.
She was never going to shoot Leon. The antiviral agent that Claire is looking for is called Devil. The cure that will save Sherry Birkin's life, the antidote that can reverse the damage done by a G mutation, is named after a cosmically cruel being. It's cheese, it's ironic, and it's so cartoonishly evil that it's a perfect fit for the Umbrella Corporation. Of course they wouldn't see the antidote as a good thing. Of course they wouldn't give it a name that has positive connotations. This serum could undo all of their hard work. To minds as warped as those working at Umbrella, it is the devil.
So Sherry's gonna be alright? She'll be weak for a little while, but... yes. She's free of the G virus. Did you hear that?
Annette's dying act is to cure Sherry. She apologizes, a twinkle of regret finally peeking out of her icy stare. In S.D. Perry's book, she doesn't get this chance because Sherry doesn't get infected with the G virus. That's a shame because Sherry being infected is key for her characterization in Resident Evil 6, but it's hard to blame Perry for that because she'd have no idea what direction the games would go in 15 years after writing. The countdown begins, the nest facility is collapsing, flames ripple up the walls and sparks spit from the ceiling. A polite recorded voice tells us that we're all going to die. It's a familiar end for Resident Evil, fleeing before the final fireball. But this time, the destination isn't a helipad, it's a tram. One last rail-bound bullet tearing through Umbrella's veins. The differences between Leon and Claire's finales are subtle but significant. Both have the same goal, reach the tram before the place explodes, and both are forced to trudge through a melting gauntlet of Ivies, liquors, and charred zombies. The flicker of the lights, the pounding of our feet on metal, the throb of the soundtrack, all of it builds to the game's final question. Are you ready to evolve? Leon faces Mr. X again, now shirtless, scarred and seething, a wall of muscle with a single directive: kill. The fight is tight and savage. We're trapped in a narrow platform. There's no space to breathe, no room to run. Just circle strafe, conserve your health, and pray to whatever god is left that he'll go down before your inventory runs dry. His jab attack is a nightmare. Debris falls from the ceiling, blocking movement. It's Leon's final sprint. A character who's sprinted all night. And when all hope seems lost, catharsis comes in the form of a rocket launcher, a gift from Ada Wong. Claire, on the other hand, gets no such kindness. She doesn't fight Mr. X here, she fights William Birkin. Again, and it's the most grotesque he's been. There's no human left in him, no mouth to speak, no eyes to plead, just a mass of bile and bone, slathered in slick muscle. Just like in the original, we can kite him around the tram. Circle, dodge, shoot, scream. It's not elegant. His body mutates before our eyes, growing new limbs, sprouting new mouths, shedding all remnants of who he used to be. He is every failure of Umbrella given form. He's a father who betrayed his family, a scientist who valued data over daughter, a man who tried to become a god and ended up something worse. Something small. And once he's dead, really dead, truly dead, for real this time I promise, Claire collapses to her knees. Her hands bloodied, her jacket charred. Sherry is saved. Her mission complete. At least for a moment.
Claire!
Leon! It's so good to see you.
I told you we'd make it, didn't I?
You did.
Who's this?
This is Sherry.
Leon, Claire, and Sherry finally unite aboard the tram. The music softens. There's laughter, relief. For the first time since Raccoon City fell, we're given the illusion of safety. The night is over. The city behind us. But Resident Evil isn't interested in clean getaways. A thing. A creature that wasn't even vaguely humanoid except for a strange pulsing tumor protruding from one side. A slick orb that looked very much like an eye. Birkin. It was a stretching blob of dark slimy matter spanning the width of the car. Somehow, it was dragging itself on tentacles of wet, elastic goo, attaching to every part of the space in front of it. The body was a gaping maw, a wet cave that still had teeth. The tram jolts, flesh slams against the walls. Birkin, in his final form, has become something closer to an event than a person. He doesn't even resemble a creature anymore, just organs and jaws and an eye. A crawling tumor that wants to consume the last person who ever loved him. This isn't a boss fight, it's pest control. He thrashes and wails like a baby in a butcher's skin. Tentacles stretch across the tram, teeth line the floor. The battle doesn't feel fair, and that's the point. Because by now, Claire and Leon are tired. The G-Virus is clawing at the walls, and every second we survive feels like borrowed time. It's short, it's sharp, and it's hideous. Claire grabs the minigun and shreds through sinew, screaming through the chaos. Catharsis doesn't come in the form of a rocket launcher for her, but all the same, it's our reward for surviving the horror of the night. The horror becomes action, the action becomes release, and then finally, we can breathe. Sherry let the warmth of Claire's hand remind her that they were friends, that whatever happened, Claire was her friend. She looked at the policeman, face dirty and scarred, and returned his smile. A weary, too adult smile that seemed out of place. She was too young to smile like that. Just like in 1998, Resident Evil 2 Remake is a mutation, an evolution, and a love letter covered in blood. When the original released, it defined what a horror sequel could be. Bigger, bolder, madder. It brought emotion to the forefront. Leon's naivety, Claire's determination, Ada's conflict, and Sherry's fear. The remake doesn't just echo that, it infects it. The bones of 1998 are there, still twitching under the skin, but they've been repurposed. This isn't nostalgia, it's necromancy, and I mean that as a major compliment. It's also Capcom at their peak. Resident Evil 2 Remake is a technical marvel. The RE engine allows for thick, dripping horror. Every hallway shines with wet rot. Every monster groans with hunger. It's a game that feels like a nightmare, not just in its creatures, but in its contradictions. Its labyrinthine design, its dead-end hallways, its cruel choices, and impossible odds. And yet, it's not just about fear, is it? It's about resilience. Yes, the zapping system has been lobotomized. Yes, some of the character interactions have been blunted or simplified. Yes, the player-driven campaign inconsistencies are still nonsense. But even with those wounds, the remake holds itself together because the soul is intact. That tension between past and present defines it. Just like its predecessor, the original game was a product of the late 90s, and that weird alchemy made it unforgettable. The remake never forgets what it is. A haunted house game where the house is on fire and the walls have eyes. And more importantly, it's still fun. The terror leads to us kicking back with a minigun, blasting away at a flesh beast, and walking out of hell with a child in our arms. That blend of schlock and sincerity, that is Resident Evil. From 1.5 to 2 to remake, Resident Evil 2 has never been static. It's been torn apart and stitched back together more times than William Birkin. But that's also a truth embedded in the game's world. Umbrella's monsters mutate, so do our heroes, so does the story. The only way to survive in Resident Evil is to change, to adapt, to evolve. And yet so many parts of the game worth praising fight against that. So many things from the original are still here, sometimes faithfully, sometimes mutated, sometimes mangled beyond recognition. The RPD is still a gothic escape house. The monsters are still terrifying. The beating heart of the game still pumps red. If you hold that fear in your hands, mold it, twist it, reinterpret it, then it can live again. It can be made new. Because fear mutates, and we either mutate with it or die.
break away, I'm